the gaming land. You are on the channel DreamerLetsplay.
There is nothing worse than spending up to $60 on a new game, only to discover after a few hours that it's not worth the money you just paid. With so many games releasing, you just don't want to waste your time or money on a bad optimized game, or even worse, a bad game at all. It's a larger offense these days, as there are so many games that offers a lot more for a smaller price. The reasons behind those disappointing releases are usually rushed development and corporate insistence on annoying practices such as microtransactions. But when a game has a bad launch and people start telling their friends that the game is not even worth the money spent, this can quickly degrade the reputation of said game. Once you take a look back, many offending games were simply not worth their money, taking into account the content and optimization of the game. While those problems were solved later, they certainly didn't worth the money at the launch. In this video, let's take a look at the top 10 overpriced games that didn't worth their money. And before we step into that, don't forget to leave a subscribe and your priceless like. We'll start with the number 10, and here is Star Wars Battlefront 2. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is a beloved PS2 classic, so when EA decided to release their own Battlefront in 2017, they were always going to be facing a hard fanbase. But to their credit, the first Battlefront from 2015 was a good game that received decent reviews from critics and casual players, taking into account that it was not matching the level of previous games. Unfortunately, EA didn't make it with Battlefront 2, and many fans were left extremely frustrated with the title at the release. When it came to the playable content, the game didn't have favorite modes such as Galactic Conquest, which a lot of old school fans were hoping would still appear. However, what really caused controversy was the use of loot boxes. Battlefront 2 was designed with a progression system based on loot boxes, which of course you could get with real money. Fans were insulted, and the backlash led to the EA getting the most downvoted comment in Reddit history when they tried to defend themselves. Some people could forgive the base game amount of content, but the microtransaction for a better experience on top of the base price was a step too far, taking into account that the game cost up to $50. On the number 9, we have Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. Fans had been demanding a new Animal Crossing game for the Wii U for a long time. Having had their fun with the new Leaf and being ready for a new Animal Crossing experience on the new console, first fans had to pass their time with Amiibo Festival. Whoever idea it was to release a new game in the series but to make it more like a Mario Party rip-off on Amiibo figures and cards should probably be kept away from the franchise from now on. It wasn't an Animal Crossing game, more like a fail to sell generic board game experience. The game itself cost $60 in a bundle on release, with future costs to be considered if you wanted to get certain villager amiibo figures for the game. It was just another discouraging title for the Wii U that further pushed away Nintendo fans. Here's a hoping that Nintendo have learned their lesson. On the number 8, we have the Order 8086. The Order 8086 looked to be another fantastic PS4 exclusive with focused narrative, just like Uncharted and The Last of Us. A game where you play as a knight who had to take on the likes of vampires and werewolves in a steampunk setting. It was a cool setting with an interesting story, but you shouldn't know by now that it doesn't mean too much. The problem with the game was too short story. You could finish the game in just over 5 hours, and there wasn't really much reasons to replay the game, as once you played it. The game was made up of a pretty repetitive third-person shooter segments and boss fights that just reused the same werewolf fight, relying on tool quick time segments. The game may look absolutely brilliant from a graphical standpoint, but there wasn't actually a match of a good game under that. Of all the games on this list, this one is the most simple. It just doesn't have enough content actually to have a $50 price tag. On the number 7, The Sin City is one of the most popular video game franchise to date. and its spin-off series centered around creating your own cities. After 6 years without a SimCity entry, fans were desperate to get a new Sims experience. Many pre-ordered Sims in anticipation, but were left more than frustrated with the bad launch. Despite being mostly a single-player experience, SimCity required that players were alone and you had to connect to a server to play the game. This led to the problem on the release, as the servers were not capable of keeping so many players and they had to wait like 30 minutes to get on the server just to play one game. If you just spent around $55 to pre-order the game, you're going to be pretty annoyed when you can't even play it when you want. The problems didn't stop here, however. Because of the poor servers, once you got in the game, you run the risk of losing your save data. The area provided for the players to build their cities was way more smaller than previous games as well. It seems a backtrack in the franchise, and it's clear that this game shouldn't be released in this state, especially at this price. Sixth place, any Call of Duty on Steam. This entry it's a bit cheeky as it's more than one game, but it's shocking how much the Call of Duty franchise costs per game on Steam. Call of Duty Modern Warfare, a game that was released over a decade ago in 2007, still costs $25. This is only half price compared to when it was released. While it's an incredibly popular game, it makes no sense to be so expensive. This is true for almost every game in the Call of Duty library. If you wanted to buy the whole franchise in one quick purchase, it only set you back $750. Well, it does include 15 different Call of Duty games. With all the DLC, that's still an average cost of $52 for each game. It's just an absurd amount of money for a series of games that are quite dated and lacking a large player base for the online content anyway. The original Call of Duty released in 2003 and still worth almost $20 on Steam, and you have to wonder if any of those games are worth the asking price on Steam. Next in the top, it's Saints Row 4. Saints Row 3 was one of the famous games of the 7th video game generation, being the true contender to GTA in the open world crime genre. Saints Row had the added edge of the surreal comedy and over-the-top gameplay, so fans were naturally excited for the follow-up to the game, which was announced shortly after Saints Row the third success. Originally planned as an expansion, it was cancelled and repackaged as a whole new game, but anyone who has played Saints Row 4 can tell you that the game doesn't actually feel like a true sequel that warrants a full game price. While it's a new story for the characters with small new gameplay addition, the core of the game is still the same. The city you play in is a copy of the previous map with some minor additions. There are barely any new vehicles, and the minigames were a mixture of activities and a visible lack of new ones. The main selling point of the game was the fact you were given superpowered abilities. Super strength, super speed, laser blast and more. While this is a very cool, it actually sort of ruins the core of the Saints Row game. You no longer need to use vehicles or weapons, as you yourself are just a walking tank. Many of those extras simply don't feel necessary to collect when you can super jump across district. On the number 4 it goes Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. The Metal Gear franchise has a mostly positive history, with many of the series entries being held to a very high regard among the video gaming community. The most recent release, Metal Gear Solid 5, saw a fantastic launch to the game and received positive reviews from critics and fans alike. As far as game went, Metal Gear Solid 5 was definitely worth the asking price. But Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, a game that released as a prologue for MGS5, was certainly not worth the price it was sold for. While the gameplay was tight and the prologue served its purpose, the game actually sold for $33 upon release. This is a ridiculous amount of money to ask for a game that is a really glorified demo. The main story only takes about 2 hours to complete. While it was an impressive demo that preceded a fantastic game, This doesn't excuse Konami for seriously overcharging for it. There was even a period where the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game were going to cost $43, but clearly that was a bit two-step even for Konami. The top 3 is opened by Fallout 76, perhaps one of the most controversial video game launches in recent history, with criticism mounting against Bethesda for the constant re-release of Skyrim and the fact that Fallout 4 was somewhat disappointing as RPG. Fallout 76 was the last straw for many gamers as Bethesda delivered an overpriced barren Fallout experience. Day 1 and several bugs were being shared online that range from silly glitched models to the game-breaking issues. While with games such as Skyrim, fans were happy to look past several technical issues, Fallout 76 did not receive this treatment. Becoming ridiculed online, the game was used as evidence that Bethesda have lost sight of their original goals and were now interested in making as much money as they could. It didn't help that Bethesda lowered the price for the game just a few weeks after release for Black Friday to try shift copies, but then they lowered the game price again in the following week. A $27 decrease in just 2 weeks just went to show that the game wasn't worth its original full price, with many fans still feeling let down by Fallout. Second place is taken by DayZ. When people aim to critique the Steam Early Access feature, they'll be quick cite DayZ as one of the worst offenders for releasing an unplayable state and charging money for it. DayZ, released on Steam in 2013 for $23, the game featured less of the gameplay mechanics than the already free Arma 2 DayZ mode. The game would continue in beta for 5 years until eventual release in 2018. While you may defend DayZ at this point as it was early access and this was clearly advertised to any purchasers, the game has now released with an increased price tag, yet the game is still a very poor state. While there are general improvements for 5 years of development, players are understandably not happy with the game that has been delivered. Much of the fanbase who still play the game really on modders to add content and fix bugs. With the base game still a slow and buggy experience, it's really hard to justify its current price.
Rages around like an ocean in my head.
And the winner of the top is Anthem. Anthem was released in 2019. Reviews were mixed across the board, but really the game just failed to make much of an impact on the industry. This wasn't the type of the game that BioWare fans were hoping for, and it wasn't really good enough to steal any other players away from similar games such as Destiny. To add further insult to injury, the game released missing several features that were promised and even seen in previous demo mods prior. The game was also in a poor state and was rife with glitches that varied from minor bugs to issues such as game crashes. Being mostly an online game, it's unfortunate that the servers were also not that great at release, leading to frequent disconnects. It just didn't warrant the price it was being sold for, and it seems to be struggling to recover the money spent on develop. BioWare used to be a hugely respected name in the industry, but now the company has sadly lost the trust of their old fanbase. While they are insistent to revive Anthem, it seems to be too little too late. This was my top 10 overpriced games. Tell me in the comments down below what do you think about this top, and thank you for your attention. I wish you the best of luck and take care of yourselves. Bye bye.